Hey, Ted here. I'm in the diesel lab here at the college, and I'm going to go over rebuilding a TAMD 31 raw water pump. Somebody asked a question about it, so let's get started. Okay, so I got the hoses off, top, bottom, no big deal. Take the screws out, break them all loose real quick before you do anything. So we want to break these screws loose, make sure that these are all loose before you take the pump off, make it easier to get them out of. So now that I've loosened all the cover screws, taken one out, I know that I can get them out real easy. When it's on the engine, that's easier. 2 bolts to take it off at this point. So 12mm socket takes the 2 fasteners that take the pump off. Pump comes right off. Okay, I got the 2 fasteners out, just slide the pump straight back. It has a rubber drive coupler on it. Okay, you want to make sure that that is in good shape. That goes in between here, between these 2 holders to drive the pump, which also drives the injection pump. So this is the same gear train that drives the injection pump. Okay, the exploded diagram picture in the workshop manual shows the shaft. There's a key in it, your cover, O-ring, impeller, goes over the shaft. The back side, you've got a seal on the inside, and then what we have inside on the back side is we have another drive piece and then another seal, 2 back-to-back bearings, and a snap ring. So I need to get that snap ring out. So first, this drive piece, if this drive piece is on there pretty firm, get a couple screwdrivers and pop that drive piece out. So, okay, I've taken a screwdriver, got a little loose, just worked it out, and as you can see, that's the drive that goes into the pump. There are 2 different versions of this pump, so let's take a look at that. So the earlier, I imagine, pump is this one, which has a little bit different shape to it to the replacement, which is on the same engine. This is a 31, but you can see that the casting was a little thicker on the older pump than the new pump. You can actually see inside where that weep hole is. It's very much the same. So it's the same bolt pattern. Okay, so we've got the 2 pumps side by side here. And I just wanted to show you that you can see the castings are slightly different. Between the old one that I noticed right away and the new one is the new one has a screw for a cam. So on this pump, there's no exterior screw, it looks like, for the cam, which is your eccentric. So once we get this apart, we'll take a look and see what is inside the cam, or if actually it's internal part of the pump. Okay, I got the cover off, and you can see this impeller's completely failed. Obviously met its demise a while ago. And you have the back side of the cover. Now there is a groove in this for the O-ring, and you can see a piece of the O-ring's missing down by my thumb here. I can pull that O-ring out, get a new rebuild kit, and if this surface is torn up really bad, just order a new cover. All right, so inside now we can see there's the eccentric, and the eccentric is, in this case, part of the housing of this pump. There is no screw in here, there's no external screw, so that means that at the age of a pump that, let's say, is at 800 hours, 1,000 hours, something like that, remember that over time that impeller is going to take all kinds of debris from the ocean, and it is just simply going to start to wear this cam away, and it will also wear the inside of the housing down. So when the inside of the housing gets scored down inside. We can fix the cover, replace the cover. We're going to take this apart, and in some pumps that bottom plate is replaceable as well. But in a lot of these style pumps, once this inside housing gets scored, and if that impeller, if you can feel grooves down inside the bottom of the housing, and in this case I can't, so this could actually be cleaned up. But you'll notice it'll be very, very noticeable that those grooves, so the bottom of the housing will be grooved. It'll have wear grooves in it. Once those grooves get above, you know, a 1/16 of an inch, then they start to affect the surface of the impeller. And then at that point, what happens is you'll start to get a cavitation in the impeller housing inside, and it will start to affect the way the pump works. So here's what I'm going to just tell you through experience, and that is, you take the pump apart and you reach in here with your finger right away. If you feel grooves in there and that plate is not replaceable, that lower area is not replaceable, just get a new pump. You don't waste your time, because you're going to end up, you know, putting a kit in it, rebuilding it, putting bearings and everything in it, and you're going to fight that whole housing problem. So I would just put a new pump in at that point. This one, we're going to go through the procedure of taking it apart, pressing the bearings out, so you can see how to do that next. Okay, you need a good set of snap ring pliers to get that snap ring out. Okay, and out with a snap ring we go. Make sure you wear safety glasses when you're doing this. So I've got the snap ring out of the back side. I've got 2 bearings in the picture in the book here. I've got 2 back-to-back bearings. There's the snap ring. So what's left is a seal, and then a couple of pieces after that, and then another seal on the inside of the housing, and then the shaft. So the only way to get the shaft out is because the bearings are pressed into the housing. Is what we're going to do is we're going to set this up on a press, and we're going to press the shaft, and we're going to press the bearings out of the housing. So let me get that set. Okay, we got this set up on a press, and I'm going to show you. I'm using a standard press mandrel here, and what I want to do is I want to make sure the inside of where this bearing is going to come out of the housing, but I have enough room to go through that mandrel hole. So once I get this centered, and I know that I'm going to press that bearing out the center, here's the next part that you need to know. So I've got a 1/2 inch extension, and I've got myself a 14mm socket, or 9/16, 12 point. It's got to be 12 point. The shaft is splined, and just so happens that that 14 or 9/16, 12 point fits in there very nice. So I'm going to set that on the press, center it up, got that all set up, and I'm ready to press the shaft out. Make sure it's nice and centered. Okay. Hold my hand under the press and wait for it to come out. Now I might bottom out here. I might have to take that socket out. But it's a great start. Ah, there it is. There's my shaft with my 2 bearings pressed right out of the housing. So you want to definitely inspect that shaft and make sure where the seal rides on that shaft. You can clean it up with some crocus cloth. This one feels pretty good. So I'm just going to take some crocus cloth and clean that shaft up. The rest of it pretty much is finding the suitable mandrel to press the seals out. Okay, so we're up against trying to figure out how to get these seals out of the housing. Now, just to remember that you can't see real well in the video, but this seal, the seal lip or open side, faces the oil gallery to keep the oil from leaking out of the engine. And this seal, again, the open side or spring side, lip side they call it in the book, faces towards the water. So it's always seals face usually back to back. One seal keeps the oil in, one keeps the water from coming out and into the housing. So I did a little measuring. Best thing I came up with, because the book really doesn't give you much information, was about the correct diameter here is a 13/16 Matco 12-point socket. That is virtually the same inside diameter. So we'll just tap this last seal the rest of the way out here real quick. There we go. Okay, so there's the other seal. And again, that seal that faces up towards the oil and the other one faces down. Now what you have is the seals, the solid sides are back to back. We have that spacer. I'm gonna find the other seal here. And that is gonna sit inside the housing like that. And that is gonna give you the correct position of those seals. So you have to have that spacer to put this back together correctly. So I'll mic that and we'll figure out what that diameter is of these seals, so then we can figure out what we need to get a manual to put these seals back in. I don't see anything in the service literature for this, which is difficult, but that's okay. We're marine technicians, we can do this, right? We can figure it out. All right, let's see what size this seal is, just so you get an idea what kind of mandrel you need to put it back in here. And this is the used one, so they give you an idea. It's about 28 millimeters. That's about the diameter of it. So something, 28 millimeters, and let's see what this 13/16 socket is. And it is 27.35. That's just about perfect. 27.6. Yep. So that's about right. This is an odd one. This is probably something you might not have, but it is the Matco 13/16 12-point socket. If somebody's got one, it's like the perfect for this pump. The seals are tapered, so the new ones are tapered, so it's pretty straightforward when you're going to put these back in. Again, I'm just going to put this down on the table. The seal side faces up, always the open side. The flat side goes down. I'm going to put that one down in there and center it by hand and give it a little push and it'll start. And I can actually push this one almost into the housing by itself. Okay, so the new ones will be a little tighter, but you can definitely get them started that way. Now, the next thing I need to do is flip it over, and I need to put that spacer right back in there from the other side. So I'm going to do that. Put that against the seal. Get my finger in there. Come on. So I got the spacer in there, and the next thing I'm going to do is put my last seal in there. Again, lip side goes up. So both remember the open or spring side goes out towards you where you're putting it in. And then I'm going to press that one in by hand just to get it started. And you can use the same tool. And what I would do is just take a flat washer that's big enough, bigger than the seal, and then just take that and push down on that flat washer, and that'll put that seal at the right position. Flip it over, put the other seal at the right position. Then we're ready to just put the bearings and the shaft back in. So again, that's going to be pretty straightforward because those bearings are going to bottom out in the house, and you're going to press that out till it bottoms in. So I'll get those seals ready. Now the next thing I need to do is flip it over, and I need to put that spacer right back in there. So I got the spacer in there, and the next thing I'm going to do is put my last seal in there. Again, lip side goes up. So both remember the open or spring side goes out towards you where you're putting it in. And then I'm going to press that one in by hand just to get it started. And what I would do is just take a flat washer that's big enough, bigger than the seal, and then just take that and push down on that flat washer, and that'll put that seal at the right position. I'm going to take that 13 millimeter socket, and I'm just going to tap that seal until it bottoms comes out. There we go. So now we got the seal in there. We can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, but this seal probably should be a little bit lower in the housing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna there we go. Now the other one, if it's pretty much flush with the housing, which it is, then looks good to me. Okay, so there you go. There's your seals. They're reinstalled. Okay, both sides. Okay, after I put it back together, I realized that I had forgotten to put that O-ring that was in there. Well, when I pulled the shaft out, I could just pop the O-ring right out. I stuck my finger in there to see if I could move that plastic spacer, which I couldn't, but I could just push the O-ring out. So I slipped the O-ring back in there, put the shaft back in, it self-centers itself. I'm not sure what the function of that O-ring is, but it's in there. Put a little grease on the seals, and then we're gonna go ahead and put that shaft back in. So we're gonna press that back in. These will start by hand. I just pushed this in by hand. Okay, I wanna talk about taking these two bearings on the shaft if you had to replace them. So I don't see a shoulder on this side, and I do not see a shoulder. I actually see a taper on this side. So my assumption is that these bearings are put to a specific position on the shaft, and that position pretty much I would say is flush with the end of that taper. As you can see, it gets a little narrower there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure down this shaft so you can get an idea of that dimension. So I'll take my vernier calipers and I'll measure that dimension for you. And about 0.7 inches, 0.6955. Put it back in here, slide it back in the housing, through the seals. It starts by hand nicely. The bearings will start by hand. So then all I need to do is press the bearings down until they bottom out. Okay, to speed things up a little bit, I've already started to press the bearings and the shaft back on. So what I got here is a 3/4 inch deep socket. So it fits right on the inside, and I'm going to press on the inside of that bearing race. Now, one note here is that the housing, this end of the housing, that raised lip that holds the hose on is below the bottom of the pump. So be careful. Don't just set this on the jig, because you're going to see that's going to hit, and that gives you the space. So you could break this whole end off while you're trying to press it on. So open up your press and let that sit in that void a little bit so that this does sit flush on the housing. And then we're just going to slide that back a little bit, and we're going to finish pressing this in real quick for you. To get it down to where that's snapping. That's it. And I'm doing this by hand with my hand, just so I'm not over pressing it, because I don't know how thick that bronze housing is there. And there we go. Now I can get that snap ring back in the groove and put my new impeller in, and she's done.